Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Krystle, just in case you are new here, and today I want to talk about some of my favorite books from 2021. I said I wasn't going to do a best and worst videos pick for books this year, for this past year, because I don't know, I didn't have the greatest reading year, and not for nothing, like, to say something is a bad book, it just isn't fair. So I'm gonna pick some of my favorites that I read this year. And like I said, I didn't get to read all the books that I wanted to read this year. I didn't get to get into any of the series that I wanted to read this year. A lot of these books just got lucky and made it to my favorites list because it's what I read this year. So picking from my stack of 55 books that I read, there really weren't any that like stuck out to me. Maybe there was one, but there really wasn't anything that I was just so over the top wowed by this year, unfortunately. But I have 10 favorites here that I really enjoyed, and I'd like to talk about it with you. In no particular order for these favorites, I'm just gonna say what they are. First one that I'm going to mention is Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey. I really enjoyed this. I don't read sci-fi, and if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know, like, I don't mention any sci-fi really on my channel at all. But this took me by surprise because it's like a space opera thriller taking place on like the Astro Belt, and it's just the coolest thing ever. I really enjoyed the first book in the series, and I'm hoping to continue on in 2022 with the second book in this series because I really enjoyed following these characters, and I know we're going to be introduced to a whole another group of characters in the second book, and I can't wait to get into it. Totally in a fantasy mood for 2022 since I didn't really get to anything that I wanted to read last year, so jumping into the Expanse series and then hopefully watching the TV show. I think it's going to be a whole like opening of doors for me this year into a new genre that I might actually really like. I think sci-fi might be something that I'm growing into. So let me know if you've read this series and you enjoyed it as well. The next book I'd like to mention is The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. This book took me by surprise, and I had that uneasy feeling the entire time reading it. It was so scary, so spooky. You didn't know what was going to happen, and sometimes I didn't even know what was happening. I was just reading off the page, and it was just insane. It just had that like crazy creep factor, similar to like Imaginary Friend, similar to like the Chalk Man, like that type of feel, but this was like even crazier. It also took like a weird sci-fi turn as well, and I liked that combination of horror and sci-fi. I know a lot of people had mixed feelings about this book, but I really enjoyed it. It really stuck with me. Like I said, I felt super uneasy the entire time reading it. I didn't really love the ending, but I really enjoyed the story. Just very haunting, and it took place on like this farm upstate, away from everybody, away from like most civilization. There were a few neighbors nearby, and it was just creepy, woodsy, sci-fi, like crazy. I don't want to ruin anything for anybody. I feel like a lot of us don't really talk about this book that have read it also because it gives things away if you talk too much about it. Just go into it not knowing anything. Just know that it's like haunting and takes place in the woods, and it's about a family and crazy things happen. The next book I'd like to mention is The Drowning Kind by Jennifer McMahon, who I love her books. I haven't read a book that she's written that I didn't like. I love all her books, so I'm looking forward to reading a little bit more of her books in this coming year. I have a few, The Night Sister I would like to read. I also would like to read Burntown. I have read The Winter People. I have read The Uninvited, and I've read The Drowning Kind. And The Drowning Kind takes place 2 different timelines, and I believe it's like I kind of forgot, but was it like a haunted pool or haunted lake, something like that, that had these like magical power. It was just magical realism, horror, thriller. It was just such a great book. I was on vacation, and actually I was staying on the Delaware River while I read that, and it was just the perfect atmospheric read for me during that time. And I just, every time I look at the cover of that book, I'm just like, I love you. I love this book so much, and I love that author so much, and I feel like she's so underrated and more people need to read her books. So if you have The Drowning Kind on your TBR and you want a super spooky, atmospheric, dark, gothic read, pick it up. It was phenomenal. So good. Next book I'd like to mention is Circe by Madeline Miller, which I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. It is a Greek retelling myth about Circe, and it's her story, because we don't really get much of her story in the Odyssey and any other story. No one really focuses on the women of Troy and what went on. So reading Circe's point of view, and she's a witch, she's a green witch, and I just love her, I channel her, I love Circe so much. So reading her story, I cried my eyes out, and I just felt for her so much. I have such a connection to her. So I want to read more about Circe. I hope more authors come out with more stories about Circe, because I just really love that story. And Madeline Miller just has a way of writing these Greek retellings. It's just, you know, everyone talks about the Song of Achilles. I haven't picked it up yet. I still need to pick it up, but I've heard nothing but amazing things, and I'm hoping that I can get to that this spring on my TBR, because I have such a long TBR for 2022. One I'd like to mention is A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And I really love this. I know a lot of people didn't, and I think it's because of how dark it really was inside of Nesta's mind. She really struggles with her mental health and her addictions and just a lot of things. And I felt like I could relate to her in so many ways reading that book. I related to her way more than I have related to Feyre. Feyre turned out to be, you know, the most perfect child, and, you know, she has all these amazing things going for her now. And with Nesta and her story, she struggles, and I really love that book. And it's a fourth in like a series, so I'm not going to touch too much on it, but if you haven't read A Court of Thorns and Roses and that entire series by Sarah J. Maas, you really need to, because it's amazing. It's so good. For everybody, I recommend that series. Next book I'd like to mention is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. Now, I'm shocked that this made it to my favorites, but looking at my Goodreads, I really had a great time reading this. I gave it a 5-star. I zoomed through it. I did not guess the ending. I thought this was an excellent thriller. It's probably one of my favorites that he's written. I love Lock Every Door. That's my #1. But I will say The Last Time I Lied is probably the second spot for my favorites out of his writing, because this one just was so good, and being in like summer camp, and it was just so nostalgic and things like that, I really just loved it. I thought it was so cool. I don't think anybody could really replicate that type of like summer camp thriller for me. It's hard because there's so many of them out there, but that one really gripped me and grabbed me, and I wanted to just keep reading the damn thing. Another book that I'd like to mention is The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. Now, this is a third in a series, the Winter Night series, and I finally finished the series in December, but I loved this third book. I'm not going to say much about what happened, but I cried my eyes out, and I just love these characters so much. I love how it's based on like Slavic and Russian folklore, because I am Slavic, so I really love learning more about that stuff. But The Bear and the Nightingale is the first book in the series, and it really reads like a fairy tale. So if you're looking for the perfect winter fantasy series to pick up, I would highly recommend the Winter Night series by Catherine Arden. It just finished up so great, and my heart, I just love the characters and the folklore. And if you love folklore, you're gonna love that series. So seriously, pick it up. You're gonna love it. And it's witchy, which, hello, I love any books about witches. You know me. Another book that I'd like to mention is Chasing the Boogeyman, and this is by Richard Chizmar. This book fooled me. I will say, I got it as an ARC, And when I started reading it, I was like, is this a true story? Like, I actually started Googling things because I'm like, how was this author involved in this? And it was really such a great put together, like, true crime, horror, fiction, I guess speculative. I'm not exactly sure, but like, it is based on true events, but the author put himself in the mix of the story because it did take place in like his hometown. So he kind of just like changed around the story, but it was based on a true story, and he has like real photos of the crime, and it was like, you know, a crime that was happening, like girls were being murdered in his hometown, and he was kind of caught in the midst of it, and it was just so greatly written. I mean, I didn't really love Gwendy's Button Box and that whole series that he wrote with Stephen King, but I really loved his writing in this, and I felt like I was reading a true crime nonfiction novel or listening to like the Morbid podcast, and I just wanted to find out what the heck happened. This was such a great book. So if you are a true crime fan, if you love Morbid, the podcast, if you love watching things that make you feel like you can't fall asleep at night, Chasing the Boogeyman is an excellent book. It was pretty scary as well. There were times where I couldn't fall asleep because I was so spooked out, and the things that were happening I was afraid were going to happen to me. So check it out if you like true crime. Like I said, so good. And now it's down to like my two favorites, like the best of the best that I've read this year, and it's kind of like a tie. I will say there's one that I just like really loved a lot. It's just like a given. I mean, I just love this author and her writing so much, and this series more than anything. I cried my eyes out, and that is The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman. What a way to end the Practical Magic series. I love these characters more than anything, and I am hoping to do a reread of this series in the spring. So if you will like to join me for that, I'm hoping like in April, I think I'm going to do like a Practical Magic reread of the series, and we can have some live shows and discuss the series because it is just a treasure in my life. I love Alice Hoffman so much, and if you guys know, like I chit-chat back and forth with her on Instagram. She always responds to me, and she's the best, and I love her so much. But her writing has changed my life so much, and I can't even begin. I could just go on. I could just go on and on and on. And I also have the collector's editions, the signed editions up here of Practical Magic, and I think the Book of Magic. Oh, Magic Lessons, I'm sorry. And they're signed by her, and they were quite expensive. They're leather bound and just stunning, stunning. They're from Easton Press, so if you want to get yourselves a copy, I love them. Loved the ending of this book. I love how everything tied together at the end of this book, and I don't want to go too much into it, but like I said, if you're someone who's curious about the series, because it is being brought up a lot on booktube lately, and you want to participate in like a read along with me, please leave it in the comments down below. This way I kind of get an idea of how many people want to join on. I really would love to discuss the series with all of you and just read it all again together this year. My final favorite book of the year is Lisey's Story by Stephen King. This book blew me away. I loved Lisey's Story so much. This is a book about one woman's slow descent into madness due to the loss of her husband. Her husband was a writer, and he unexpectedly died 2 years ago at like a book signing for his book series, and he left behind all these like letters to her, telling her these secrets that she never knew about him and his past and his childhood growing up. And oh my goodness, this was so heart-wrenching. And I just have to say, like, Stephen King writes grief so well, and that's where my love for him really comes in, is because you could just tell that these were feelings that he really felt at some point in his life, and I just love the way he writes. Obviously, you guys know he's one of my favorite authors. I'm shocked that I never picked it up sooner. It always kind of fell off the grid for me. It wasn't something that I would go for. Just from even like the cover of the book, nobody really talks about this story, but my friend Marcy was like, read it, you're gonna love it. And boy, it's my favorite book of the year. I absolutely loved it. I need like a t-shirt that says "To Boo Ya Moon," If you read the book, you know what that is. But I really loved it. It does have a little bit of a slow start, but Stephen King wrote this very similar to, like, mirroring something that did happen in his life. After his almost fatal accident that he had in, I think it was 1999, where he almost lost his leg. He ended up getting really sick with pneumonia, and he was in the hospital for a month. He came home and his wife literally cleared out his entire office. He had nothing, like his books, nothing was in there. It was like empty. And he came home and he was like, did I die? Like, I feel like I died. That kind of just sparked this story of Lisey's story. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. So I highly recommend it. I loved it so much. And there is definitely a lot of trigger warnings for this book. It is an adult book and there are horror elements going into it. So if you want to Google trigger warnings, you can. But just know, going into a lot of these books, actually, it's adult content. And there's a reason why it's called adult content, is that there are some triggering subjects mentioned. So just take that into consideration when you go to pick up this book. But it was excellent. Great story, and I highly recommend it to everybody. That is it. That's all I have for my favorite books of 2021, and I'm hoping to have a lot more favorites this coming year, hoping to read a little bit more if I can. As I'm filming this, it is my 34th birthday. I wasn't going to film this today, but I just love filming and I'm off today, so why not? I need to get this out there to you guys and let you guys know what I did read in 2021 that I really enjoyed. I am getting married this year, as I've stated in the past, so if my reading gets a little messed up and my plans get messed up for reading, it's understandable, but I'm hoping to really stick with the definite things that I want to read series-wise, and all of that, and stop falling into the booktube hype and just read the things that I have, because that's important too. I have way too many books that are unread, which I will do another video on. I'm going to be doing the 22 books of 2022 that I want to read that I own. That's basically it for this video. Let me know if any of these were some of your favorites for the year, if you read them as well. And let me know what your favorite book was for the year that you read. I would love to know. This way I can just keep adding more to my TBR. But on that note, it was really nice talking with you today. I hope you were all well and staying safe. And if you like this channel and you want to see more from me, just make sure that you like and subscribe down below. All of my book club information for the Horror in 24 book club is down below as well. And on that note, I will be talking to all of you guys soon. Bye!